She looked me in the eye and said, "We got married yesterday. Only special people were there. I'm Helen. If my story helps you set boundaries, hit subscribe. Linda from Ohio. Thank you for joining us. My name is Helen Carter. I am 70 years old, a retired English teacher and a black woman who has spent her life believing that if I worked hard, loved deeply, and sacrificed often, it would all come back to me one day. For 32 years, I have lived in this brick bungalow on the south side of town, the house my late husband Robert and I bought when the mortgage rates were brutal. But our hope was stronger. Every corner of this house still carries his touch. The creak in the hallway where he used to pause for a kiss. The mark on the kitchen counter where he spilled varnish trying to fix a cabinet. This is the home where I raised my only son, Evan, and where I thought I would celebrate his wedding day. When Sloane, my daughter-in-law, looked at me with that smooth, polished smile and said they had married yesterday, that they had only invited special people, it felt like a door closing in my chest. Evan couldn't even look at me. He stared at the carpet as if the answer was written in the fibers. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My body went still the way it does when a storm siren goes off. You hold your breath and wait to see if the house will stand. Upstairs, hanging on the back of my bedroom door, was a salmon-colored dress I had picked out months earlier. I remember standing in the department store, tracing the pleats with my fingers, telling the saleswoman, "My son is getting married. I want something elegant, but not too loud." I imagined myself standing in wedding photos, smiling beside Evan, holding Sloane's hand, welcoming her as a daughter. That dress was more than fabric. It was a promise to myself that I still belonged in my son's future. In my dresser drawer, a white bank envelope lay waiting, sealed with a card and a check for $1,000. I had worked it out carefully in my planner, subtracting from my retirement budget, cutting back on small luxuries so I could give them a start. I had even called my sister Diana in Milwaukee to tell her, "I'm going to surprise them. I want to be generous." On my kitchen table, the planner itself was still open, boxes neatly checked. Pick up lemon bars. Hair appointment Thursday at 2. Call florist. My handwriting, steady loops of black ink, looked almost foolish now, like a child writing to Santa Claus. And inside Robert's old Bible, pressed between the Psalms and the Gospel of John, was a folded letter. I had written it late one night, candle lit, tears dripping onto the paper. Words of blessing for Evan, words of encouragement for Sloane. A message from both his parents, one living, one gone, that love was stronger than death, and that this new family had our full blessing. None of it mattered. Instead of being the proud mother in the photographs, I was the ghost no one mentioned. Being 70 and black, I know what it is to be looked through, but never by my own child. I told myself to breathe, to stay upright, to not crumble in front of the woman who had just told me I wasn't special. I told myself to breathe, to stay upright, to not crumble in front of the woman who had just told me I wasn't special. Evan cleared his throat. His voice was flat, rehearsed. It was small, Mom, just the two of us and witnesses. But I had already seen the truth. Social media has no mercy. The night before, I had scrolled through a parade of smiling faces. Sloane in a white dress I had helped her buy, her parents toasting with champagne, her siblings clapping as if they'd won a prize. Every click of the arrow showed me what I had been denied. Every "congratulations" comment on her page was a hammer on my chest. Now they stood in my living room, my son with his eyes lowered, my daughter-in-law smoothing the fabric of the sofa I had bought for them, as if she owned it. "Congratulations," I heard myself say, though the word was jagged in my throat. I hope it was. Everything you wanted. Everything, I realized, did not include me. I stood there with my hand pressed to the wooden armrest, feeling the grain beneath my fingertips, anchoring myself. My heart was breaking in silence, and that silence was louder than any scream I could have made. Humiliation cools into numbers. At least, that's how it happened for me. The night after Sloane's little revelation, I couldn't sleep. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, turned on the soft yellow lamp above the sink, and spread my planner across the table like a crime scene. I pulled out folders, envelopes, even old receipts I had tucked into a shoebox labeled, "For taxes." I wanted to see it all, to feel the weight of my generosity in black and white. Rent first. For nearly 40 months, I had sent $650 to their landlord. Month after month, never late, never missed. That alone was $26,000. I wrote it down. The numbers so large they looked foreign to me. Groceries and household supplies came next. Gas cards slipped into Evan's palm. Grocery bags carried up to their apartment when Sloane said she was too tired to cook. Call it $150 a month. Over those same 40 months, that was $6,000. Emergencies. Always some little crisis. The car repair when their engine light came on. $1,200. Sloane's emergency dental work. $800. A medical bill that was about to go to collections. $700. I paid it all without blinking. Furniture. I still remembered the salesman's voice when I bought that sofa. Those end tables. Those lamps. "Ma'am, this is a durable fabric. Good for young families." That was $1,400. Loans. That word still makes me laugh bitterly. Loans that were never going to be paid back. Just until the end of the month, Sloane had said. Standing in my kitchen with crocodile tears, I wrote them a check for $2,200. I never saw a penny of it again. Gifts, Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, at least $2,000, maybe more. If I added every candle, every dinner out, every Amazon package I paid for. I paused, the pen shaking in my hand. The total was climbing toward the height of a mountain I hadn't even realized I was scaling. And then there was the envelope, sitting in my dresser drawer, pristine and sealed. $1,000 as a wedding gift. Money I had cut from my own medication budget, my own travel plans, my own little comforts. When I added it all up, the number stared back at me like a slap. $31,800. I had poured that much into Evan and Sloane's lives. Money from Robert's pension. Money from my retirement savings. Money I had promised myself I would use to see the ocean again. To finally visit New Orleans like Robert and I had dreamed. To replace the roof before the next winter storm. Instead, it had all gone into someone else's refrigerator, someone else's car, someone else's celebrations. I laid my pen down and pressed my palms against the cool wood of the table. My kitchen, neat and quiet, suddenly felt like a courtroom. And the verdict was clear. I had been guilty of financing my own erasure. I thought about the things I had sacrificed. The choir trip to St. Louis I skipped because Sloane called. Panicked about rent. The time I returned a pair of shoes I loved because Evan's car battery had died. The afternoons I turned down lunch with friends because I needed that cash for their emergencies. Piece by piece, I had dismantled my own joy so they could build comfort on my back. And what had I gotten in return? Not even a seat at their wedding. Not even a mention in their vows. Just a smile, practiced and cruel, telling me I wasn't special. I closed the planner and rested my hand on Robert's Bible. Inside, the folded letter waited like a bruise that hadn't yet surfaced. I had written about legacy, about love that multiplies when shared. And now I saw the truth. I had been multiplying their comfort while dividing my own soul. The clock ticked past midnight. The house was silent, except for the sound of my own breath. I felt old that night, not from age, but from carrying too much weight that wasn't mine. I whispered into the quiet, "Robert, I hope you forgive me. I thought I was protecting our son. I thought I was building his future. But maybe I was just digging a hole for myself." The Bible lay heavy on the table, its spine pressed against the wood like judgment. And all I could think was, $31,800. That was the price of being invisible. A week passed after the wedding revelation, though to me it felt like a season had burned through. The salmon-colored dress still hung on the back of my door like an accusation. My planner lay closed on the kitchen table, its neat check boxes mocking me, and the sealed envelope with the wedding gift sat untouched in my drawer. as if it already knew it would never find its way to their hands. On the 7th morning, my phone rang. The screen lit up with Sloane's name. For a moment, I considered letting it buzz itself into silence, but habit is a stubborn thing. After 3 years of constant requests, my reflex was to answer, "Helen!" Her voice was bright, almost cheerful, like she hadn't cut me out of her wedding a week before. "We need your help." There it was. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a demand dressed in sweet tones. "Our rent is late," she went on. "The landlord is pressing us hard. He said if we don't pay by Friday, he'll start eviction papers. You must have forgotten to make the transfer." Forgotten. As if paying their rent had become as automatic as brushing my teeth. I held the phone to my ear and let the silence stretch. My eyes wandered around the kitchen. The cupboards were clean but half empty. My refrigerator hummed with leftovers from meals I had made for myself and never for them. On the windowsill, a framed photo of Evan as a boy smiled back at me, gap-toothed and innocent. My son had once thought I was the most important person in his world. Now I was just a wallet with legs. "Helen, did you hear me?" Sloane's voice had a nervous edge now. I remembered the total written in my planner. $31,800. Money I had poured into their comfort, while denying myself the smallest luxuries. I thought of the letter tucked inside Robert's Bible. Words of blessing meant for a day I never got to see. "Yes, Sloane," I said finally, my voice steady. "I heard you." "Good," she said quickly. "So if you could transfer the $650 today, that would be perfect. We're already a week behind." I took a deep breath. My hand brushed against the Bible on the table, its leather cover cool beneath my fingertips. Robert would have known what to say. He always had a way of finding a sentence that cut to the truth. So I borrowed his strength. "Sloane," I said slowly, "didn't you tell me last week that only special people were invited to your wedding?" The line went quiet. I didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "You know how weddings are. Stressful." I closed my eyes. I could still see her face. That smile she had worn while slicing me out of the most important day of my son's life. "I remember your exact words," I said. "Only special people." "Yes, but I only help special people," I cut in, my voice sharper than I expected. The silence on the other end was so deep I could hear my own pulse. "What?" she whispered. "You heard me. For the first time in 3 years, my hands did not reach for my checkbook. For the first time, my voice did not bend into apologies or excuses. I sat at my own kitchen table, surrounded by receipts of sacrifice, and let the silence be the answer." Sloane tried again, her tone trembling now. "Helen, please. We'll be thrown out. Evan's hours were cut, and..." I ended the call. The dial tone filled the room for a second, then faded into quiet. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from fear, but from release. I set the phone down next to the planner and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I had not rescued them. For the first time, I had chosen myself. The weight of that choice pressed against my chest until tears spilled over. Not sad tears, tears of something older, sharper. Anger, maybe, or dignity waking from a long sleep. I whispered into the stillness, "Robert." I finally said no. The photo of Evan on the windowsill caught the morning light, his boyhood smile frozen in time. I wished I could explain it to that little boy, that love is not measured in rent checks, that a mother's worth is not written in dollar signs, but the man he had become would have to learn that on his own. And I was done paying the tuition. 3 days after I had told Sloane I only helped special people, there was a knock on my door. Not a polite knock, a heavy, insistent pounding that rattled the frame. When I opened it, Evan and Sloane stood there. Between them was a man I had never seen before, wearing a gray suit too slick for a weekday morning and carrying a leather folios under his arm. "Mom," Evan said, voice low, "this is Mr. Fisher. He's a family advisor. He's here to help." "Help with what?" I asked, but they were already moving past me, stepping into my home as if it were theirs. The man smiled with practiced politeness. "Mrs. Carter, your son and daughter-in-law are concerned. They tell me you've been under stress, making unusual financial decisions, isolating yourself, installing unnecessary cameras. These can be signs of confusion. especially at your age. At your age. The words stung. I closed the door and followed them into my living room. The space Robert and I had built together. The very air felt hijacked. Sloane sat down on my sofa, the one I had bought for them, crossing her legs as if she owned the place. Evan stood behind her, eyes darting everywhere but at me. Mr. Fisher placed his folio on my coffee table and opened it, sliding a stack of papers toward me. "This is a simple power of attorney," he said smoothly. "It would allow Evan to help you manage your finances, just temporarily, until things stabilize." I didn't touch the papers. "Stabilize from what?" I asked. "From your confusion," Sloane said gently, her voice dripping false concern. "Helen, you've been so forgetful, not paying rent, not answering our calls. We're worried about you." I felt my jaw tighten. "Not paying your rent," I corrected, "and not answering your calls, because I chose not to." Evan finally spoke, his tone almost pleading. "Mom, come on. We just want to take some of the burden off your shoulders. You've always handled things for everyone. Maybe it's time to let us handle things for you." I glanced at the papers again. Legal language swam across the page like quicksand. I thought of Robert's Bible sitting in the next room. I thought of the planner on my kitchen table. Every page proof that I was still sharp enough to organize, to plan, to live. "Why does this paperwork need to be signed today?" I asked. Mr. Fisher leaned forward. "Because the sooner it's in place, the sooner your son can protect you from mistakes." "Mistakes?" I almost laughed. "My only mistake," I said slowly, "was paying $31,800 to two adults who think I'm confused because I decided to stop." Sloane's face shifted, her smile tightening. "We don't want this to go to court," she said. "Neither do I replied. "Which is why I suggest you all leave my house. Now." Evan stepped closer. "Mom, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Something inside me broke open. Years of bending, of apologizing, of smoothing over. I stood up straighter, my hand pressing into the wood of the coffee table. "This is my home," I said firmly. "You entered without asking. You brought a stranger to pressure me. You've looked at me not as a mother, but as a bank account. And now you want me to sign my name to your control? Absolutely not." I gathered the papers into a neat stack, placed them back into Mr. Fisher's folio, and closed it with a snap. "Take your lawyer and leave." For the first time, Sloane dropped the sweet tone. Her eyes flashed cold. "If you won't let us help, the court will." The air thickened. Even Evan looked startled at her bluntness. I walked to the door and opened it wide. "Out," I said. My voice didn't shake. "All of you." They shuffled past me, Sloane's heels clicking sharp against the wood floor. At the threshold, she turned and smiled in my face. The same smile she wore when she told me I wasn't special. "This isn't over, Helen," she said softly. The door clicked shut behind them. I leaned against it, my heart pounding. But not from fear, from fury, from resolve. For the first time in years, the silence in my home belonged to me. The morning after I showed them the door, I put on my church suit and went to the bank. The lobby smelled like copier toner and lemon cleaner, the same way it had smelled for decades. Mr. Collins, the branch manager, rose from his desk when he saw me, the kind of man who remembers birthdays and asks about grandbabies. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "how can we help today?" "I'm here to help myself," I answered. "I need to cancel every automatic transfer to my son's landlord, and I want safeguards on my accounts. Alerts, new passwords, new cards, all of it." He nodded without judgment, only care. We sat side by side while he clicked and typed. One after another, the outgoing payments I had set up were turned off, like porch lights going dark at bedtime. He printed forms, explained options, and set up text alerts for withdrawals over $100. I opened a small new account at a different institution. He recommended it, so I'd have a quiet place to move a portion of my savings. He even handed me a list with big, simple letters. "Review beneficiaries, check credit, secure mail. There will be a fee of $12 to rush the new card," he said. "Worth it? Worth it," I said, and slid my ID across the desk like laying down a burden. When I walked back to my car, The winter sun was bright enough to sting. I sat a moment and breathed. Her father walked past with a little girl in pink boots. He balanced her on the curb and held her hand when the balance wobbled. I felt something old and tender ache inside me. I used to steady Evan just like that, whispering, "I've got you." Somewhere I had turned that whisper into a lifetime promise to catch him every time, even when he leapt on purpose. From the bank, I went to the hardware store. A woman in a red vest, Ms. Gomez, showed me deadbolts that clicked steady as a heartbeat. I paid $230 for new locks and scheduled installation for the afternoon. "Do you want door viewers too?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And a chain." Before lunch, I called a local security company. Ethan, a technician with soft eyes and a toolbox, arrived in a white van and walked me through the cameras like I was learning a new recipe. 2 for the porch and driveway, 1 for the back, he said. "Everything connects to your phone. If someone steps foot where they shouldn't, you'll know." The system cost $750, with a monthly fee of $25. It felt like buying sleep. While Ethan drilled and measured, I made tea and laid my planner open on the table. I wrote the date in neat ink and added a new section I'd never had before. Boundaries. Under it, I wrote 3 lines. No loans. No surprise visits. No conversations without respect. I underlined each one twice. In the afternoon, I did something small and radical. I kept my hair appointment. Cynthia at the salon clucked and laughed and wrapped me in a cape that smelled like hairspray and coconut oil. She colored the silver at my temples just enough to make it look intentional and filed my nails into clean ovals. The total came to $120. I left a tip of $20 because I wanted to. When I caught my reflection in the window as I walked out, I recognized the woman looking back, tired, yes, but upright, present. On the drive home, I passed the lake, dark and flat like slate. Robert and I used to sit there with coffee in a thermos and talk about everything and nothing. Which song the choir should sing Sunday, whether the tomatoes would take this year, if we could ever afford to see New Orleans. I pulled over and let the engine tick. "You would have told me to stop sooner," I said out loud, and the cold air carried my breath like smoke. Back at the house, the locks clicked new. The door viewer showed a tiny circle of my porch, framed in brass. The cameras chirped on my phone. Front door, online. Driveway, online. I walked room to room, touching things the way you touch a sleeping child. Lightly, like blessing. The salmon dress still hung on the back of my door. I didn't have the heart to take it down, so I zipped its garment bag and slid it to one side of the closet, a prayer I wasn't ready to say aloud. On the kitchen table, I placed Robert's Bible and the bank envelope side by side, the letter still tucked between thin pages. I took the photo of Evan from the windowsill, gap-toothed in 2nd grade, his smile missing that front tooth he'd lost on the playground, and for a long minute, I just held it. "I love you," I told the paper, "but I love me too." Then I slipped the photo into the Bible beside the letter, 2 pieces of my heart pressed into the same book. As dusk settled, my phone started to ring with numbers I didn't know. I let them go to voicemail. Then texts. "Mom, please call. We need to talk. This is getting serious." I did not reply. I made soup and ate it at my table with the light low, the way I do when I want the day to end gently. At 8:30, a car rolled slow past my house. The driveway camera recorded it, a dark sedan. The driver's face turned toward my windows. I felt the old panic rise and then pass, like a wave that lifts your feet, but sets you down again. I opened my planner and wrote the time. If there was going to be a record, it would be mine. The next morning, the doorbell rang. 3 quick chimes, the kind of rhythm that sounds official. My phone buzzed. Front door. Motion detected. On the screen, I saw a woman in a neat coat with a lanyard and a folder, the city seal printed in blue on a badge. The doorbell chimed 3 quick notes. On my phone, the porch camera showed a woman in a neat navy coat, hair pulled into a low bun, a lanyard catching the winter light. She held a folder against her chest like a shield. City seal on the badge, blue and official. I did not open the door. I pressed record on the app and set my palm on Robert's Bible to steady my breath. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," she called through the door. voice professional but kind. I'm Ms. Schmidt with the Office of Senior Services. We received a report that you might be at risk. I'm here for a wellness check. A report, of course. Ms. Schmidt, I said, loud enough for the mic in the door. I'm going to call my attorney. Please wait a moment. I dialed Mr. Weber. He answered on the second ring. Helen, there's a social worker at my door, I said. Badge, folder, the whole thing. I'm 10 minutes away, he said. Do not answer questions until I arrive. You may invite her in after I get there, if you wish. I returned to the door. Miss Schmidt, my attorney will join us shortly. You are welcome to wait on the porch. There was a pause, then a measured, of course. 10 minutes is a long time when your heart is pacing. I set the bank envelope and my planner on the kitchen table. I opened the planner to today's date and wrote, in careful print, Wellness Check, 9:32. Below it I listed 3 bullet points. Competent, independent, boundaries. Mr. Weber arrived with a respectful knock and a wool coat that shook off the cold, like a dog shakes off rain. I opened the door. We introduced ourselves to Ms. Schmidt, who showed us her ID again. Up close, she couldn't have been more than 40, with bright eyes that missed little. May I come in, Mrs. Carter? She asked. You may, I said. I led them to the dining table. The Bible, the envelope, and the planner sat where I'd placed them. Like 3 anchors, Ms. Schmidt opened her folder. We received a call stating that you've made abrupt financial changes, installed surveillance equipment, and cut off your family. The caller expressed concern about confusion and possible exploitation by neighbors or professionals. Professionals. I glanced at Mr. Weber. He folded his hands, listening. I will answer your questions, I said, but I want the record to show that I am doing so voluntarily and with counsel present. Ms. Schmidt nodded. That's fine. Her questions were straightforward. Did I live alone? Yes. Did I manage my own bills? Yes. Did I take any regular medications? No. Vitamins and the occasional aspirin. Could I show recent statements or a budget? I slid the planner toward her, open to a month of neat entries, and a folder of printed bank summaries I'd pulled last night. She scanned, lips moving slightly as she tracked dates and amounts. You see the automatic transfers here, I said, pointing. 40 months of rent for my son and daughter-in-law. I canceled them last week. That's the abrupt financial change. And the camera system, she asked. I installed it after 2 porch thefts. The police report numbers are written here. I tapped a sticky note tucked into the planner pocket. She looked at Mr. Weber. And you are her attorney, he said, here to ensure she isn't harassed or coerced. My client recently experienced an attempted pressure campaign to sign a power of attorney in favor of her adult son. She refused appropriately. Ms. Schmidt's eyes flicked to me. Is that true? Yes, I said. They entered my home with a man I didn't know and pushed papers across my table. When I said no, I was told the court would make me say yes. She jotted notes. Do you feel safe? I looked around my house, the worn oak, the sunlight on the rug, the chair with Robert's groove still in it. I feel safer this week than I have in years, I said. But I'm not naive. I know they may escalate. May I ask you a few cognitive questions? She said gently. It's part of our protocol. Go ahead, I said. She asked me to remember 3 words, to count backward by 7s, to explain how I'd handle a lost debit card. I answered slowly, clearly, the way I used to coach my freshmen through oral exams. Breathe, think, speak. She smiled once, small and genuine, when I recited the 3 words back after a few minutes had passed. Mrs. Carter, she said at last, closing her folder. I see no indication that you're at risk or unable to manage your affairs. I will note the new security measures and the financial changes as reasonable responses to family conflict. This case will be closed. Relief moved through me like warmth after a chill. Mr. Weber nodded. Thank you for your professionalism, he said. At the door, Ms. Schmidt hesitated. For what it's worth, she said softly. These calls sometimes come from family who are upset about boundaries. If anything escalates, document everything and contact us. Our office does not take sides, but we do protect seniors. "I've started a log," I said, tapping my planner. "Times, dates, drive-bys, all of it." After she left, I locked the door and watched the porch camera feed until the city car pulled away. Mr. Weber remained standing, studying my face like a teacher waiting for a student to name the lesson. "The next move?" I asked. "They may file in probate or family court for guardianship," he said. "It's a high bar. We'll prepare as if they will try." My phone buzzed on the table, a text from an unknown number. "You didn't have to do that. You're making this worse. We'll see you in court." No signature. None needed. I took the phone and snapped a screenshot. Then, in my planner, I wrote, "Message, 9:59. Threat of court." I tucked the screenshot printout into the Bible, beside the letter and the photo of Evan as a boy. 3 truths, layered. Who he was, what I wrote, what they threatened. I sat very still, then I lifted my head. "All right," I said to the quiet house. "If it's court, it's court." If this moment feels familiar, tap-like, someone who needs strength might find it because of you. The morning of the hearing, I put on my black church suit and polished my flats until I could see the window light in them. I slid my planner into my tote, along with printed bank statements, a slim folder Mr. Weber had prepared, and one small thing for courage, the photo of Evan at 8 years old, gap-toothed and sticky with popsicle. The Bible stayed on my dining table at home. I tucked the letter from inside it into my wallet, folded twice. At the courthouse, the hallways smelled like dust and coffee. Mr. Weber met me by the elevators, his tie a sober navy. "Breathe," he said softly. "We show the truth. They show their story. Judges know the difference." In the courtroom, Judge Ramirez sat high behind the bench, a woman with silver at her temples and reading glasses low on her nose. On the other side of the aisle, Evan wore a new suit that did not fit his shoulders. Sloane had chosen a black dress and pearls, the image of bereaved dignity. Their attorney, Mr. Adler, older and smooth, arranged his papers with the assurance of a man who billed by the hour and smiled rarely. "Carter versus Carter," the clerk called. "Petition for guardianship." Guardianship, a word that can sound like protection, unless it comes from people who want your keys. Mr. Adler went first. "Your Honor, our petitioners are concerned for Mrs. Carter's well-being. In recent weeks, she has made abrupt financial changes, isolated herself from family, and installed surveillance equipment. She is at risk of exploitation by outsiders. We request limited guardianship so her son may assist with decisions." He used a voice meant to soothe. Honey poured over a hook. "We will show," he continued, "a pattern of confusion and declining judgment. We will show loving family members trying to help." Judge Ramirez nodded once. "Proceed." They called Sloane first. She took the stand and folded her hands, eyes shining. "Mrs. Carter has been like a second mom to me," she said, voice trembling perfectly. "But lately, she's changed. She forgets things. She won't answer calls. She snapped at us for visiting. We're just trying to keep her safe." Mr. Adler guided her like a dance teacher. "Did she cancel rent payments you relied on?" "Yes," Sloane said, a catch in her throat, without warning. "And has she accused you of mistreating her?" She said we excluded her from the wedding, but it was small, Your Honor. Just very intimate." When Mr. Weber stood for cross-examination, his voice was firm and plain. "Mrs. Parker, when was the last time you called my client without asking for money?" Sloane blinked. "We talk about many things." "A date, please." "I don't recall." "Is it true that you and your husband received $650 a month for nearly 40 months from Mrs. Carter to pay your rent?" "Yes." "Is it true she bought your living room furniture for $1,400? "Yes." "And made additional payments for your car repair, dental bill, and a loan totaling over $4,000? "Yes." "Is it true you told her, quote, 'We only invited special people to your wedding'?" Color rose under Sloane's makeup. That was taken out of context. "What is the context in which you tell a 70-year-old mother she is not special enough to attend her only son's wedding?" Sloane's mouth opened and closed once. "It was a high-stress day. Thank you," Mr. Weber said, and sat. Evan testified next. Seeing my son's hand on the Bible, another Bible, tightened something under my ribs. "My mom has been generous," he said, "but lately she's been irrational. She cut us off. She has strangers coming over. She's paranoid." Mr. Weber rose again. "Mr. Carter, how much money has your mother given you and your wife in the past 3 years?" "I don't know the exact amount. Does $31,800 sound familiar?" Silence. "And these strangers? A locksmith and a security technician. You're aware your mother scheduled those appointments after someone pounded on her door and entered her home without invitation?" Evan's jaw tightened. "We're family. Family can make appointments too," Mr. Weber said. "Did you bring a family advisor to pressure Mrs. Carter into signing a power of attorney? We wanted to help by taking control of her accounts." He didn't answer. "They brought a neighbor, Mr. Davis, who testified that I'd been acting strange, installing cameras and shouting in the street. Under Mr. Weber's questions, he admitted he'd never asked me why the cameras went up, and that the shouting was me telling uninvited visitors to leave my porch. Mr. Adler presented a letter from a clinician who had never examined me, suggesting possible cognitive decline. Mr. Weber handed up our own evaluation, Dr. Moore's report from last week, stating clearly that I was fully capable of managing my affairs, my scores well above average for my age. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber called Ms. Schmidt from Senior Services. She explained the wellness check, her review of my documents, and her conclusion. No indication of risk or incompetence. New security measures and financial changes appear reasonable responses to family conflict. He called Mr. Collins from the bank, who testified that I had competently managed my accounts for years and requested standard security upgrades. Finally, he called me. The oath felt like rinsing my mouth. I sat straight, hands folded, the photo of Evan, a warm rectangle in my pocket. "Mrs. Carter," Mr. Weber said, "can you tell the court, in your own words, why you changed your financial arrangements?" I looked at the judge, at the seal on the wall, at the rows of benches that smell like polish. "Because I realized," I said, slow and even, "I was paying rent for a relationship that didn't include me." A hush settled. I went on. "For nearly 40 months, I sent $650 to their landlord. I brought groceries, I paid emergencies, I bought furniture. I set aside $1,000 for their wedding gift. The total is $31,800. I did it because I believed that's what mothers do. They help, but help turned into expectation. And expectation turned into entitlement. When I was told I wasn't special enough to be at my own son's wedding, something in me woke up. I am competent, Your Honor. I am also finished being used." Mr. Adler tried to make me look brittle. "Mrs. Carter, is it true you installed surveillance because you believe your family is dangerous?" "I installed cameras because packages were stolen, and because people who feel entitled to your money often feel entitled to your home. You've become isolated, haven't you? I go to the bank, the salon, the lake. I have neighbors who bring me coffee and friends who share soup. I am not isolated. I have boundaries." He showed me photos of the porch camera and the new deadbolts, as if hardware were evidence of delusion. I named the invoices, the dates, the reasons. My voice did not wobble. When the testimonies ended, Mr. Adler argued again for loving oversight. Mr. Weber's closing was simple. "This is not about confusion," he said. "It is about control. Mrs. Carter's financial decisions are rational responses to documented exploitation. She retains full capacity. The petition should be denied." Judge Ramirez leaned back, removed her glasses, and looked at each table in turn. The clock on the wall ticked so gently I could hear my breath. "Mrs. Carter," she said at last, "thank you for your clarity. Petitioners, thank you for your testimony. The law requires clear and convincing evidence to remove an adult's rights. I do not find it here." Mr. Adler's jaw moved once, like he had swallowed a stone. "The petition for guardianship is denied," Judge Ramirez said. "Furthermore, I caution the petitioners that continued harassment may result in protective orders. Family conflict is not in itself evidence of incapacity. This court recognizes Mrs. Carter's autonomy. If you needed this judgment as much as I did, hit like, so it finds the next woman who's fighting. The gavel's little rap sounded like a lid settling on a boiling pot. I exhaled a breath I did not know I'd been holding for 40 months. Evan stood, eyes on the floor. For a heartbeat, I saw the boy from the photo. Then Sloane's hand touched his sleeve, and the picture went flat again. They did not meet my eyes as they left. Mr. Weber squeezed my shoulder. "You did beautifully," he said. "I only told the truth," I answered, and the truth was enough. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the air felt different, thinner, cleaner, like a room after someone finally opens a window. Mr. Weber shook my hand and told me to rest, but I did not feel tired. I felt awake. At home, I set my tote on the table and took out 3 things: my planner, the photo of Evan at 8, and Robert's Bible. I laid them in a neat row like a lesson plan. Then I did something small that meant everything. I opened the white bank envelope I had sealed months ago. The card with the embossed doves still smelled faintly of the stationery store. I slid out the check for $1,000, crossed out the payee with a careful line, and wrote a new one. Harbor Street Senior Legal Aid, in the memo I printed, for someone's mother. I walked it to the mailbox and lifted the red flag. A different kind of gift. My phone buzzed. Unknown numbers, apologies without names, explanations that sounded like invoices. I screenshotted each one, archived them by date, and forwarded them to Mr. Weber. Then I turned off the phone and wrote in my planner, "All communication through counsel." Under it, I copied 3 sentences in dark ink. No loans, no surprise visits, no conversations without respect. I drew a box around the word "no" and shaded it in until the paper felt thick. The next morning, I drove to the Community Arts Center and signed up for a watercolor class. The brochure showed tulips and cityscapes bleeding into light. The fee was $180, and I paid it with a joy that felt almost mischievous. On the way out, I saw a flyer for a volunteer shift at the senior center. Tuesday mornings, phone companions for homebound elders. I wrote my name and number, and for once it was my name going on a list to give something I wanted to give. That afternoon, Eleanor knocked with a casserole and 2 forks. "Victory lasagna," she said, holding the pan like a trophy. We ate at my kitchen table, steam curling in the late sun. She told me about her daughter's new job. I told her about the class and how long it had been since I held a brush, with nothing to grade afterward. Before she left, she pointed at my planner. "Write down something just for pleasure every day. A small rebellion." So I did. Wednesday, paint a lemon. Thursday, walk by the lake. Friday, call Diana. On Saturday, I wrote something that made my heart jolt like a startled bird. Price train to New Orleans. Robert and I had promised each other that city when we were young and broke, when the choir was our travel and the back porch our balcony. Promises deferred long enough harden into furniture. You forget they can move. By the weekend, Mr. Weber arranged a letter to Evan and Sloane. All communications through his office. Any approach to my home would be treated as harassment. He suggested I consider a partial protective order if the drive-bys continued. I checked the camera history. 2 slow passes on Friday, 1 on Sunday at 9:47. I printed stills, logged the times, and slid them into a plastic sleeve in my binder. Evidence is a kind of scaffold. It keeps a story from collapsing under he said, she said. On Sunday morning, I sat in my usual pew and let the choir carry me. When the offering plate came by, I tucked in $20 and a folded note that simply said, "Thank you for finding me when I was lost." After service, a woman I know from the quilting circle hugged me tight. "We were praying," she whispered. I felt held by hands visible and invisible. That afternoon, I cleared a corner of the spare room. I moved the ironing board, set a folding table by the window, and taped a sheet of watercolor paper to a board, like I was pinning down a small, gentle storm. I placed the photo of Evan at the edge of the table, a witness rather than a weight. I squeezed out lemon yellow and ultramarine and watched them bloom toward each other when the brush met water. The first wash was clumsy and bright, and mine. Later, I pulled Robert's Bible onto my lap and unfolded the letter I had written for a wedding I did not attend. I read the lines I had crafted by candlelight, blessings about partnership, patience, the long obedience of love, and realized I meant every word, even if no ceremony had received them. I added a postscript in my neatest print. Love is a gift, not a salary. Boundaries are part of love. Then I tucked the letter back between the thin pages, alongside the photo. The book felt heavier and more honest. On Monday, I bought a blue carry-on suitcase for $99 and a small travel journal for $12. At the register, I found myself smiling at nothing. The clerk asked, "Going somewhere fun?" "Going somewhere long promised," I said, and the words tasted like citrus. By midweek, the senior center called. A woman named May wanted a phone companion. "I don't need anything," she told me in a strong voice that remembered music. I just missed the sound of another person's day. Every Tuesday at 10, we started sharing mornings. Her stories about jazz records and a garden she kept in coffee cans. My updates on a painting that kept getting too green, and then just right. I did not fix Evan's problems that week. I did not answer Sloane's explanations. I did not open the door to pity, dressed as duty. When sorrow rose, I let it be a wave, and not a flood. When anger came, I let it burn clean and stop at the edges of my skin. Boundaries, I learned, are fences that keep the heart from wandering into other people's fields. One evening, as the sun unspooled gold across my living room rug, I took the salmon-colored dress from the closet. I thought I would have to throw it away to be done with it, but my hands refused. Instead, I pressed it flat on the bed and slid it into a garment bag. "For a day that suits me," I told it. Some things still get to be beautiful. Before bed, I wrote one more line in the planner, neat and simple. Freedom tastes like hope. Then I circled Tuesday and drew a tiny train. 3 months later, the city felt new, without moving an inch. On Tuesday mornings, I called May at 10 o'clock sharp, and we traded weather, recipes, and the small courage it takes to keep going. On Thursdays, I walked by the lake with a thermos and watched geese quarrel like old married folks. On Saturdays, I painted lemons that finally looked like lemons. The corner of my spare room smelled faintly of paper and rain. I kept my planner open on the kitchen table. The boundaries page stayed at the front. No loans, no surprise visits, no conversations without respect. Most days I did not need to read it. Some days I did. I checked my cameras less, and my pulse more. Both quieted. I did go to New Orleans. I took the train because trains let you be carried without apology. In the dining car, I sat across from a woman with a scarf wrapped like a crown, and we compared church choirs and gumbo. When the city opened around me, brass, bougainvillea, balconies proud as peacocks, I walked slower than the tourists and faster than my fears. I stood in a courtyard where a fountain kept its own time, and I told Robert out loud, "We made it after all." A young musician laughed into his trumpet, and for a moment, the sound braided past and present like ribbon. When I came home, the salmon-colored dress still hung in its garment bag. I wore it to Eleanor's garden club supper. We ate peach pie on paper plates, and a woman I'd never met told me, "You look like a second spring." I smiled and said, "It feels like one." A letter arrived from Harbor Street Senior Legal Aid, printed on plain paper saying that my donation had covered court fees for 2 clients. Both cases involved adult children seeking control of a parent's finances. It read. I set the letter beside the white bank envelope I had emptied months ago, and I cried for a minute, soft and grateful. Some evenings my phone buzzed with numbers I knew by heart and chose not to answer. Mr. Weber kept his file. I kept my peace. If a day comes when remorse arrives without a bill attached to it, I will know it by its weight. Until then, my porch light is for neighbors, and my heart is for people who can carry it gently. Before bed, I sit with Robert's Bible on my lap. I slide the photo of Evan, gap-toothed and sticky with summer, into the page with the letter. My handwriting has not changed. My life has. I whisper the blessing I wrote for a wedding I did not attend, and ask God to let it soften what needs softening, and harden what needs a spine. Love is still love. It just does not spend the rent on disrespect anymore. If you've ever stood where I stood, between love and self-respect, then you know the ache, and you know the way out. It is one small no at a time, until your life can hear itself think. If you've ever felt this way, you know my pain, and you know my freedom. Subscribe. Tell me how you found your strength, and share this with someone who needs a hand to hold while they say no.